What if the obstacles holding you back exist only in your mind? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words cut straight to the heart of Stoicism, a philosophy not of passive acceptance, but of relentless self-mastery. Think about the last time you told yourself, "I can't do this." Was that limit real, or was it a story you believed? Stoicism teaches us that our greatest battles aren't against the world, but against the invisible barriers we build within ourselves. And today, we're dismantling those barriers one by one. This isn't about abstract theories or dusty old books. Stoicism is a survival toolkit for the modern world, a practical, battle-tested wisdom that transforms how we face challenges. Imagine waking up each day unshaken by fear, undeterred by setbacks, and unwavering in your purpose. That's the power of applying Stoic principles. They don't just change your mindset, they rewrite your reality. From entrepreneurs to athletes, history's highest achievers have relied on these same mental frameworks to push beyond what others thought possible. The question isn't whether Stoicism works, it's whether you're ready to use it. In this video, we're diving deep into 22 Stoic commands that shatter self-imposed limits. These aren't vague affirmations, they're precise, actionable strategies, like wielding a chisel against the marble of your own potential. You'll discover how to silence the inner critic that says you're not enough, how to turn obstacles into fuel, and how to cultivate an unbreakable focus that most people never experience. By the end, you won't just understand Stoicism, you'll have a blueprint to live it. So let's begin where all real change starts, with the courage to confront the lies we tell ourselves. Your limits are about to be redefined. The first and most fundamental Stoic command is this: master the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, laid it out plainly. Some things are within our power while others are not. Your opinions, your actions, your desires, these belong to you. But the weather, traffic, other people's choices, those lie beyond your reach. Here's where most of us go wrong. We exhaust ourselves fighting battles we can't win, pouring energy into changing what was never ours to command. Picture this: you're stuck in a meeting where your boss shoots down your proposal. Your heart races, your frustration builds, but ask yourself, was it ever in your power to force their approval? The Stoic shift happens when you stop conflating effort with control. You can prepare thoroughly, speak persuasively, but the final decision, that's not your territory. Now apply this to everyday stress: the rude comment from a stranger, the delayed flight, the unexpected bill. Each time you react with anger or anxiety, you're handing over your peace to something outside your influence. But when you train yourself to ask, is this mine to change? That's when you reclaim your power. Try this exercise for one day. Carry a small notebook. Every time you feel tension rising, jot down whether the source is within your control. You'll quickly spot the pattern. Your suffering comes from mistaking externals for your responsibility. The magic of this practice isn't indifference, it's clarity. By focusing only on what you can affect, your preparation, your attitude, your next move, you stop drowning in hypotheticals. Ancient Stoics likened it to an archer. You control drawing the bow, aiming true, releasing the arrow. But once that arrow flies, wind or fate decides where it lands. Your job isn't to curse the wind, it's to knock another arrow. So tonight, ask yourself, where have I been playing archer and whether God at the same time? That awareness alone will lift weights you didn't realize you were carrying. Now let's turn to the second Stoic command, one that might make you uncomfortable just hearing it. Seneca, the philosopher who advised emperors, put it bluntly: Set aside a certain number of days where you will be content with the scantiest food, the poorest clothing. Then ask yourself if this is really the worst you fear. This is the practice of voluntary discomfort, and it's the antidote to modern life's greatest weakness, our addiction to ease. Think about it. When was the last time you truly challenged your comfort zone? Not because you had to, but because you chose to. We live in a world designed to eliminate friction. Thermostats keep us at the perfect temperature. Apps deliver food with a tap. Algorithms feed us content that never challenges our views. But here's the paradox: the more comfortable we become, the more fragile our minds grow. Stoics recognized this centuries ago. They didn't wait for life to force hardship upon them. They sought it out deliberately. Cold showers before dawn, walking barefoot in winter, fasting for a day to remember hunger. These weren't acts of punishment, but training, like lifting weights for the soul. Take cold showers, a simple but powerful example. That initial shock when icy water hits your skin, that's your brain screaming for the comfort of warmth. But when you stay under that water anyway, you're teaching your mind a crucial lesson: discomfort won't break you. You're proving to yourself that you can endure more than you think. The same principle applies to skipping meals occasionally, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or even leaving your phone behind for an afternoon. Each small act of resistance builds mental calluses. Here's the modern trap we fall into. We mistake convenience for happiness. We chase endless comfort, then wonder why we feel so brittle when life inevitably gets hard. But the Stoics knew something we've forgotten: strength isn't born in comfort. It's forged through resistance. So ask yourself, what's one comfort you could give up this week? Maybe it's sleeping on the floor for a night to appreciate your bed, or turning off notifications to reclaim your focus. The goal isn't suffering for its own sake. It's reminding yourself that you're capable of more than your routines suggest. This practice has a ripple effect. When you regularly step outside your comfort zone voluntarily, life's involuntary hardships lose their sting. A delayed flight becomes a chance to practice patience. A power outage turns into an unplanned digital detox. That's the real power of voluntary discomfort. It rewires your relationship with adversity. You stop seeing challenges as threats and start recognizing them as opportunities to flex your resilience. So tonight, as you stand in front of the shower, consider turning that knob to cold. The first few seconds will be brutal, but the confidence you'll feel afterward, that's the beginning of unshakable strength. Death is the ultimate deadline, one we all pretend doesn't exist. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, kept this truth at the forefront of his mind with two Latin words: Memento Mori, remember you must die. While modern culture drowns mortality in distractions, endless scrolling, binge watching, empty busywork, the Stoics wielded death as a whetstone to sharpen their purpose. Picture a Roman general standing triumphant after battle, his soldiers cheering. Behind him, a slave whispers in his ear, "All this glory is fleeting. You too are mortal." That wasn't morbid, it was medicine. A reminder that time is the one currency you can't earn back. Here's the uncomfortable question we avoid: how many of your some days would survive if you knew your days were numbered? We delay hard conversations, postpone bold moves, save our best ideas for a perfect moment that never comes, all while acting like we're immortal. The Stoics called this the procrastination of the soul. Seneca put it brutally: you act like mortals in all you fear and like immortals in all you desire. But flip this mindset and you unlock ferocious clarity. A writer who remembers mortality doesn't wait for inspiration, she writes today. A father aware of life's fragility doesn't postpone that camping trip with his kids, he books it now. Steve Jobs captured this perfectly when he said, Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices. Try this exercise tonight. Write your own eulogy, not the sanitized version for the funeral program, the raw, honest truth of how you've spent your time. Does it praise your Netflix hours, your mastery of complaining, or does it speak of risks taken, love expressed, battles fought for what mattered? That gap between the eulogy you'd want and the one you're earning, that's your compass. Memento Mori isn't about fear, it's about focus. The Roman Stoics didn't dwell on death to despair. They used it to strip away pettiness. When you know the sand is falling through the hourglass, you stop arguing over the thermostat and start building the legacy that outlasts you. So ask yourself as you close this video, what's one thing you'd do differently today if you accepted that someday isn't promised? That answer isn't morbid, it's your marching orders. Consider this: what if fear lost its power to paralyze you? Seneca's fourth Stoic command, Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils, turns anxiety on its head by transforming dread into preparation. Picture a fire drill. Buildings don't conduct them because they expect disaster, but because readiness extinguishes panic. The Stoics applied this same logic to life's uncertainties. They didn't just wait for storms to hit, they rehearsed them in advance. Imagine waking up to an email saying your position's been eliminated. Your heart drops, your palms sweat unless you've already walked through that scenario in your mind, not as a nightmare, but as a puzzle to solve. Here's how it works in practice. Take 10 minutes this week to vividly imagine a worst-case scenario: losing a major client, a sudden illness, a betrayal by someone you trust. But here's the critical twist: don't stop at the disaster. Walk yourself through the recovery. What's your first move? Who can you lean on? What skills or savings can you activate? Ancient Roman leaders used this technique before battles, visualizing everything from enemy charges to supply shortages. Modern Navy SEAL call it stress inoculation, exposing yourself to controlled doses of adversity to build immunity. The magic lies in the shift from what if to even if. Most people torture themselves with hypotheticals, spinning in mental loops. But when you've already faced the dragon in your mind, real-life setbacks feel like familiar terrain. A CEO who's mentally rehearsed a stock crash doesn't freeze when it happens, they execute the plan they've already drafted. A parent who's imagined a child's serious illness isn't blindsided by hospital logistics. They've already researched specialists and insurance details. This isn't pessimism, it's strategic optimism. Seneca wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Try it today with something small. What if your car breaks down on the way to an important meeting? Mentally pack the jumper cables, note the nearest repair shops, and rehearse calling the client with a calm update. You'll notice something profound. The scenario loses its fangs. The goal isn't to dwell on darkness, but to carry a flashlight so you're never truly in the dark. So here's your challenge. Pick one genuine fear lurking in your mental basement. Maybe it's a health scare, a financial rupture, or a creative failure. Now close your eyes and walk through it step by step, not as a victim but as a problem solver. Where would you find leverage? What forgotten strengths could you deploy? That mental blueprint you just created, that stoic armor, forged in advance so you're never defenseless when life strikes. What if every setback wasn't just something to endure, but something to embrace? This is the radical shift behind the fifth Stoic command, Amor Fati, love of fate. While the phrase comes from Nietzsche, its roots dig deep into Stoic soil. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Picture a blacksmith's forge. The hammer doesn't destroy the metal, it shapes it. Stoics saw life's blows the same way. That job rejection, it's steering you toward a better fit. The failed project, it's stripping away approaches that don't work so you can find ones that do. Most of us treat misfortune like an enemy at the gate, something to resist, resent, or regret. But Amor Fati flips the script. Imagine two sailors caught in the same storm. One curses the wind, wasting energy fighting what he can't change. The other adjusts his sails, using that same wind to reach new shores. Both face identical conditions, but only one transforms adversity into advantage. The Stoics weren't preaching passive acceptance. They were advocating alchemy, turning leaden circumstances into golden growth. Take the story of James Stockdale, the Navy pilot imprisoned during the Vietnam War. Tortured regularly, he credited Stoicism for his survival, saying, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality." That's Amor Fati in action. Loving fate doesn't mean pretending chains don't chafe. It means recognizing those chains are honing strength you'd never develop in comfort. Now apply this to your life. That cancelled plan freed up time for a neglected passion. The criticism that stung, it highlighted a blind spot needing refinement. Even loss, when approached with Amor Fati, carries hidden gifts. The death of a loved one teaches the fragility of time. A betrayal reveals who truly stands by you. The practice isn't about slapping a smile on suffering. It's about mining meaning from every experience, good or bad. Try this reframe today. Pick one recent frustration, a missed opportunity, a conflict, a delay. Ask yourself, how is this exact situation preparing me for what's next? Maybe the traffic jam granted you 10 minutes to listen to an inspiring podcast. Perhaps the disagreement with your partner revealed a communication pattern worth improving. Amor Fati turns life into a collaborator rather than an opponent. When you stop fighting reality and start working with it, you'll notice something extraordinary. The universe begins to feel less like a maze and more like a mentor. What separates random scribbles from transformative writing? Marcus Aurelius didn't journal to vent, he wrote to wrestle with himself. His private pages, now known as meditations, reveal brutal self-interrogations. When you wake reluctant to rise, remember, your purpose is to work as a human being. Or does merely breathing satisfy you? That's the power of Stoic journaling. It's not a diary, but a mirror held up to your soul. Most of us treat journaling like emotional recycling, dumping frustrations onto paper. But the Stoics engineered it as mental weightlifting, strengthening clarity with every sentence. Here's how to structure yours. First question, what truly lay within my control today? Not the rude email from a colleague, but your decision to respond with professionalism or pettiness. Not the rain that cancelled your hike, but choosing to enjoy a quiet afternoon reading instead. This isn't about tallying wins and losses. It's about spotting where you misallocated your energy, like a financial audit for your attention, revealing the expenses wasted on things you couldn't change. Second question, where did I confuse comfort for virtue? Modern life blurs these lines constantly. That extra hour scrolling felt like rest, but did it truly restore you or just numb you? Agreeing to avoid conflict might have felt kind, but was it actually cowardice in disguise? Stoics called this prosouch attention to intention. The Roman soldier didn't polish his sword thinking, "This is tedious." He knew preparation was inseparable from survival. Your journal exposes the moments you traded discipline for distraction. Final question, the hardest one. What would my best self have done differently? Not your guilt-ridden self or your defensive self, the version of you that operates with wisdom and courage. Maybe that self would have ended the pointless debate after 2 exchanges, not 20. Perhaps it would have asked for help instead of pretending to have all answers. This isn't self-flagellation, it's pattern recognition. Like a coach reviewing game footage, you're identifying the plays that cost you the match. Now here's your challenge. Tonight before bed, write just one entry using these 3 questions. No flowery prose, no performative insights, raw honesty. The goal isn't volume, it's velocity. A single sentence answering each question with surgical precision does more than pages of rambling. Imagine future you reading these entries months from now. Will they see excuses or evolution? That blank page isn't just paper, it's the anvil where you forge a sharper mind. Pick up the hammer. There's a reason Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by his master's cruelty, became one of history's most revered philosophers. He understood that ego isn't just a barrier to growth, it's a prison we build with our own hands. His warning cuts deep. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Picture 2 students in a workshop. One interrupts the instructor to showcase his expertise. The other sits silently, scribbling notes. Which one leaves transformed? The answer exposes a universal truth. The moment you prioritize proving yourself over improving yourself, you've already lost. Modern life turbocharges this trap. Social media rewards posturing, carefully curated profiles where everyone's a guru and no one admits doubt. But scroll through those highlight reels and ask yourself, where's the growth in perpetual performance? The Stoics practiced something radical for their time and downright revolutionary for ours: deliberate humility. Not the false modesty of downplaying achievements, but the raw courage of seeking out criticism like a miner panning for gold. Take a workplace scenario. Your team's project missed its targets, and during the post-mortem, a junior colleague points out flaws in your approach. Ego responds with defensiveness. They don't understand the bigger picture. Stoicism responds with curiosity. What if they see something I've missed? History's greatest innovators shared this trait. Thomas Edison's lab walls were papered with failed experiments he called education. Chess grandmaster Magnus Carlsen reviews every loss twice, once to analyze his mistakes, twice to study his opponent's brilliance. Here's the uncomfortable litmus test. When did your ego last cost you wisdom? Maybe it was dismissing feedback because it came from someone younger. Perhaps it was clinging to an outdated method because admitting its flaws would mean admitting you were wrong. Epictetus offered a remedy. If someone tells you that you're wrong, don't argue, thank them. Not because they're always right, but because their perspective is a mirror you can't hold up for yourself. Try this exercise today. Seek out one piece of constructive criticism. Ask a trusted colleague, what's one thing I could do better? Or review a past failure without the filter of justification. That tightening in your chest, that's ego fighting for survival. But here's the secret: every time you let ego die a little, you make room for something far more powerful. The kind of growth that doesn't just polish your edges, but reshapes your foundations. The choice is yours. Protect the statue you've carved of yourself, or grab a chisel and start sculpting something greater. Seneca cracked open a secret most never discover. You don't need to feel patient to act patiently. His advice was radical for its time. Pretend you possess a virtue until you do. Modern science now calls this behavioral activation, but the Stoics were using it 2,000 years earlier. Think of a time you forced a smile during bad news somehow. The physical act softened the emotional blow. That's the as-if principle in motion. Your body doesn't just express your mind, it sculpts it. Take traffic rage, a modern battleground for patience. Your palms grip the wheel, your jaw clenches as the car ahead crawls. Now imagine consciously relaxing your shoulders, slowing your breath, even nodding as if you chose this delay. The delay hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. You're not waiting for patience to magically arrive. You're building it through deliberate action. Olympic athletes use this technique before competitions standing tall, adjusting their posture to trigger confidence chemicals before the race even starts. Here's where most self-improvement methods fail. They tell you to believe in yourself before you've given your brain evidence. Stoicism flips the script. Action precedes belief. A nervous speaker doesn't wait for fear to vanish. They practice speaking slowly and clearly as if they're composed, and the composure follows. A leader doubting their decisions adopts the posture of certainty during meetings, and soon the certainty becomes authentic. Your nervous system can't distinguish between a real smile and a forced one. Both release the same mood-lifting neurotransmitters. So tonight, pick one virtue you wish you embodied more fully. Maybe it's discipline with your diet, grace under pressure, or generosity when tired. Tomorrow, spend just 2 hours acting as if you already possess it. Notice how your voice changes when you speak with unearned confidence. Observe the shift in reactions when you respond to interruptions with practiced calm. The ancient Stoics knew what psychologists now confirm. We become what we repeatedly pretend to be. Your character isn't fixed, it's a muscle waiting to be flexed into existence. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, didn't just teach philosophy, he lived it in every word. Legend says he could silence a room with a single sentence, not because he spoke loudly, but because he spoke necessary truth. Compare that to how most of us communicate today: floods of words drowning in emojis, half-formed thoughts tossed like confetti, conversations that leave us more drained than enlightened. The 9th Stoic command cuts through this noise: speak with purpose or not at all. Think about the last meeting you sat through where someone spoke for 10 minutes without saying anything. Or the text thread that spiraled into 50 messages when 5 would have sufficed. Every unnecessary word isn't just wasted breath, it's stolen time, yours and others. Ancient Stoics measured speech like gold, valuable precisely because it was scarce. When Julius Caesar sent dispatches from battlefields, his famous Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered, wasn't just bravado. It was strategic efficiency. That same clarity could transform your emails, your presentations, even your casual chats. Now contrast this with how we often use language as a weapon or a shield. Gossip dressed up as just sharing news, complaints masquerading as venting, passive-aggressive comments labeled just joking. Zeno warned that disordered speech reflects a disordered mind. When you scatter words carelessly, you're not just cluttering conversations, you're eroding trust. People remember who speaks with integrity and who drowns them in drama. Here's the practice for one day. Apply the triple filter test to everything you say. Before speaking, ask, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If it fails even one filter, let it die in your throat. You'll quickly notice how much of our chatter exists to fill silence, not to convey meaning. That colleague who monologues about traffic. The friend who rehashes the same grievances. They're not communicating, they're vibrating. Consider a CEO announcing layoffs. The weak leader hides behind corporate jargon about synergy realignment. The Stoic leader speaks plainly. These changes are painful, but here's why they're necessary, and here's how we'll support those affected. Brevity paired with honesty doesn't soften the blow, it respects the intelligence of those receiving it. Your challenge today: audit one conversation. Maybe it's a scheduled call or an impromptu coffee chat. Count how many words you use to hedge, to justify, to deflect. Then imagine Zeno at your shoulder, whispering, cut it in half. You'll discover something profound. The fewer words you use, the heavier they weigh. Silence isn't emptiness, it's the space where truth resonates. So next time you reach for your phone to type, hey, just checking in, pause. Does that message need sending? Or are you just afraid of quiet? Seneca warned of minds so crowded with other people's thoughts that there's no room left for our own, and he never even glimpsed a smartphone. Imagine his horror at modern life's greatest paradox. We have access to all human knowledge, yet struggle to hear our own wisdom over the noise. Your brain isn't designed to process breaking news from 5 continents before breakfast, algorithmically amplified outrage by lunch, and a doom-scrolling marathon before bed. This isn't information consumption, it's mental suffocation. Consider how ancient Stoics cultivated focus. Seneca would take months away from Rome to write in solitude. Epictetus taught in a quiet garden, not a bustling forum. They understood what neuroscience now confirms: constant input fragments attention like sunlight through shattered glass. Every ping, notification, and headline isn't just stealing minutes, it's eroding your capacity for deep thought. Like trying to fill a cup under a fire hose, most of what we consume spills over uselessly, leaving nothing to nourish us. Here's the litmus test. When was the last time you sat silently for 20 minutes without reaching for a screen? Not meditating, not waiting, just being. That discomfort you feel at the thought is the withdrawal symptom of an overstimulated mind. The Stoic remedy isn't total isolation, but ruthless curation. Just as you wouldn't eat expired food from a dumpster, why let mental junk food clog your consciousness? Start with a simple audit. Open your phone's screen time report, not to judge but to observe. Which apps leave you energized versus drained? Which news sources inform versus inflame? One executive client of mine discovered he'd spent 11 hours weekly reading political commentary that only made him resentful. His experiment: muting all political accounts for a month. The result: he reclaimed 19 hours, launched a creative project, and realized most urgent debates were noise masquerading as importance. Your challenge is simpler. Pick one input source: a toxic subreddit, a gossipy group chat, a panic-inducing news app, and silence it for 7 days. Not forever, just long enough to notice what grows in that mental space. Maybe it's clarity on a delayed decision. Perhaps it's the resurgence of an abandoned hobby. The Stoics knew this truth long before digital detox trends. What you remove from your mind matters as much as what you put in. That vacant real estate, it's where your best thinking builds its home. Epictetus dropped a truth bomb that still rattles cages 2,000 years later. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. That's the Stoic definition of victory, an internal scorecard completely detached from society's flashing neon metrics. Think about how we typically measure success: promotions, likes, bank balances, the size of our homes. Now imagine 2 people at a reunion. One boasts about their job title while secretly drowning in stress. The other radiates calm, having rebuilt their life after bankruptcy. Who's truly winning? Take arguments, those emotional boxing matches where most of us confuse volume for victory. Picture a couple fighting over chores. The winner yells loudest and storms off feeling superior. But the Stoic, they might concede the point, yet walk away with something far more valuable: their integrity intact, their emotional regulation strengthened, their relationship preserved. That's the paradox. What looks like losing to an outsider is often profound personal progress. The ancient Greeks called this eudaimonia, flourishing that comes from alignment with your principles, not applause. History's greatest growth stories are written in perceived defeats. J.K. Rowling's 12 publisher rejections for Harry Potter weren't failures. They were forcing her to refine the magic. Thomas Edison didn't see 10,000 unsuccessful light bulb attempts as losses, but as discoveries of ways that didn't work. Even in sports, Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team, a brutal loss that fueled his legendary work ethic. The common thread, redefining victory as who you become through the struggle, not just the outcome. So here's your challenge: revisit a recent loss through this lens. Maybe it was a missed promotion that freed up time for a passion project. Perhaps a rejection letter pushed your craft to new levels. Even heartbreak, while agonizing, often plants seeds of emotional intelligence that bloom in future relationships. The Stoics weren't naive Pollyannas. They were strategic alchemists transforming leaden experiences into golden wisdom. Your turn to pick up the crucible. That thing you've been beating yourself up over, look again. The trophy might be hidden in the wreckage. Seneca saw through the illusion that traps most of us. We complain about life's brevity while squandering days like counterfeit coins. In On the Shortness of Life, he drops this thunderbolt. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Think about your last week. How many hours vanished into social media autopilot? How many meetings overstayed their usefulness? The modern world has perfected a cruel trick. It keeps us perpetually busy while starving us of what truly fills our souls. We confuse motion for progress, activity for achievement. Here's the Stoic wake-up call. Time isn't just passing, it's being stolen with your silent consent. That 2-hour Netflix binge after an already draining day, it's not relaxation, it's anesthesia. The endless scrolling through polished highlight reels of strangers' lives. Not connection, comparison, slow poison. Seneca called this poverty of attention, letting our most irreplaceable resource leak through fingers while chasing what glittered. Try the deathbed test, a merciless but clarifying lens. Imagine your final moments morbid, but stay with me. Will you wish you'd attended more Zoom calls? Refreshed your inbox more diligently? Or will you ache for the books left unread, the conversations postponed, the passions deferred for someday? A terminally ill patient doesn't regret missing a meeting, they regret missing sunsets. This isn't about guilt, it's about recalibration. Time audits reveal brutal truths. Track your hours for 3 days like a forensic accountant. You'll find black holes, the 20-minute, quick check of news that spirals into 90, the productive errands that could have been batched into one trip. One executive client discovered he spent 11 hours weekly in meetings that could have been emails. His solution, a standing rule. If there's no agenda with clear decisions needed, the meeting's cancelled. Your challenge starts small. Tomorrow, excise one-time waster. Maybe it's the morning scroll before your feet hit the floor. Perhaps it's saying yes to a request that should have been no. The Stoics didn't advocate monastic deprivation, they practiced intentional allocation. Like a master chef who won't clutter a plate with filler ingredients, they trimmed life down to what nourished the soul. That unused gym membership, cancel it and take sunrise walks instead. The group chat that's 90% memes, mute it and call an old friend. Here's the paradox Seneca uncovered. When you stop trying to do everything, you start doing what matters. The Roman elite filled their days with banquets and theatrics. Sound familiar? While the philosophers wrote timeless works in stolen morning hours. Your calendar isn't just a schedule, it's a moral document showing what you truly value. So tonight, ask, what's one thing on tomorrow's agenda that future you will thank you for? That's where your scissors should cut first. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a truth in his private journal that would echo through centuries. The obstacle in the path becomes the path. At first glance, it sounds like philosophical wordplay until you witness someone live it. Picture a tech entrepreneur whose app crashes spectacularly on launch day. Servers fail, investors panic, and the media declares it a flop. Most would see this as a death blow. The Stoic founder, they see raw material. That outage exposes flawed infrastructure. The criticism highlights blind spots in their pitch, and the very public failure becomes a masterclass in resilience. Suddenly, what seemed like a roadblock transforms into the roadmap. This mindset shift isn't about toxic positivity pretending everything's fine when it's not. It's about recognizing that obstacles don't block your path, they reveal it. Think of a sculptor staring at a jagged piece of marble. Where others see imperfections, they see the contours of the statue hidden within. The Japanese art of kintsugi takes broken pottery and repairs it with gold, not hiding the cracks, but celebrating them as part of the object's history. Your setbacks are no different. That rejected manuscript, it's teaching you where your writing needs edge. The strained relationship, it's showing you where your communication falters. Consider the story of James Dyson. 5,126 failed prototypes preceded his first successful vacuum cleaner. Most would tally those as defeats. Dyson called them necessary steps. Each malfunction wasn't proof the idea wouldn't work, it was data pointing toward how it eventually would. The Stoics called this antifragility, the phenomenon where systems actually grow stronger when stressed. Your muscles don't build during the workout, but in the recovery after fibers tear. Likewise, your competence expands not despite obstacles, but because of them. So here's the pivotal question. What problem in your life right now are you cursing that you should be courting? Maybe it's the client who keeps challenging your proposals. Are they a nuisance or a free consultant sharpening your thinking? Perhaps it's the budget cuts forcing you to do more with less. Could that constraint fuel creativity rather than stifle it? Even physical limitations follow this rule. Famed neurologist Oliver Sacks transformed his own leg injury into a research opportunity by documenting his brain's adaptation to immobility work that revolutionized rehabilitation science. The practice is simple but brutal. Next time you hit resistance, pause and dissect it. What's this obstacle teaching me about my preparation? Where is it pushing me to grow? How could this exact frustration become the foundation of my next breakthrough? The answers won't erase the difficulty, but they'll alchemize it from something you endure into something you exploit. That project you're tempted to abandon, don't. The obstacle isn't in your way. It is the way. Walk it. Picture a river in spring swollen with melted snow, rushing over rocks with enough force to uproot trees. Now focus on one stone midstream, smoothed by centuries of currents, yet never budging an inch. That's the Stoic ideal of resilience, not avoiding life's turbulence, but standing unmoved within it. Epictetus framed it perfectly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Most of us live like leaves in that river, flailing, spinning, absorbing every emotional current. But the Stoic trains to become the rock observing chaos without becoming part of it. Take insults, those verbal stones people hurl, hoping to crack your composure. The average person reacts like a pinball. Strike them with criticism, and they light up with defensiveness or collapse into self-doubt. But the Stoic, they hear the words, assess if any truth hides within, and respond, or choose not to, from deliberate intent rather than reflex. Imagine someone sneers at your work in a meeting. The leaf in the river response, flushed cheeks, stumbling rebuttals, maybe hours of obsessive replay. The rock, a nod, perhaps a single clarifying question, then moving forward untouched. The insult doesn't vanish, it just loses power to distort your inner stillness. This isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about sovereignty over them. A rock doesn't resist the river, it lets water flow around it. Similarly, acknowledging frustration isn't weakness, but letting that frustration dictate your actions is. Naval Ravikant, the modern Stoic entrepreneur, puts it sharply: the less you react, the more power you have. Reactivity is permission you grant others to steer your state. Every time you withhold that permission, you reclaim a fragment of your sovereignty. Try this exercise today. Pick one trivial irritation, a rude driver, a snarky comment online, and consciously observe it like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. Notice the heat rising in your chest, the itch to respond, then pause. Ask, what changes if I don't engage? You'll discover something revelatory. Most emotional tsunamis only flood the shores you leave undefended. The rock doesn't win battles, it renders them irrelevant by refusing to fight on unstable ground. Now zoom out, that colleague who thrives on drama, the relative who baits you into political arguments. They're not your opponents, they're the river testing your form. Every time you choose not to mirror their chaos, you're not just practicing self-control, you're sculpting an unshakable core. The world will never run out of storms, but storms don't determine your stability, your foundations do. So next time chaos swirls around you, ask not how to stop the river, but how deeply your roots go. Epictetus dropped a psychological grenade that still detonates in modern minds. Don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish events to happen as they do. At first glance, it sounds like surrender until you experience the liberation hidden within. Picture this: you're late for an appointment, white-knuckling the steering wheel as traffic grinds to a halt. Your pulse quickens, your jaw tightens, all fighting an immovable reality. Now flip the script. What if, instead of resenting the delay, you saw it as gifted time? 10 minutes to listen to that podcast you saved, to call an old friend, to simply breathe before the next sprint. That's reverse clinging, not passive acceptance, but active realignment. Most suffering stems from a simple miscalculation. We treat reality like clay, expecting it to mold to our desires. But traffic jams, cancelled flights, and rude co-workers aren't clay, they're concrete. You can either exhaust yourself pounding against them or lay your foundations around them. Ancient Stoics called this the Art of Assent, not agreeing that everything's perfect, but recognizing that resistance to what's already true is the true source of pain. A modern therapist might call it radical acceptance, but Epictetus framed it more poetically. The world is a wrestling school. The competition isn't with your opponent, but with the part of you that wants to flee the mat. Here's where this practice transforms from philosophy to superpower. That meeting that just got rescheduled. Instead of fuming over lost preparation, use the bonus hour to refine your proposal. The rain that ruined your picnic, an excuse to light candles and play board games indoors. Even major setbacks follow this rule. An entrepreneur friend's failed product launch became the research phase for his now thriving pivot. The event didn't change, his relationship to it did. Reverse clinging isn't about liking what happens, it's about mining value from whatever happens. Your challenge today: pick one uncontrollable event, a delayed package, a noisy neighbor, even bad weather, and perform a mental judo flip. Ask, how could this exact situation serve me? Maybe the extra wait time becomes a chance to people watch and gather character ideas for your novel. Perhaps the noisy construction outside forces you to relocate to a cafe where you serendipitously meet a future collaborator. The key lies in shifting from "this shouldn't be happening" to "this is happening, where's the leverage?" Epictetus, who endured slavery and exile, understood something we often forget. Fighting reality is a war you'll always lose, but dancing with it. That's where the magic lies. So next time life hands you a traffic jam, don't just tolerate it, unwrap it. The gift isn't in the event, it's in what you choose to do with the space it creates. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who lived in a simple clay hut while shaping Rome's greatest minds, saw through a lie we still believe today, that more always equals better. His radical teaching cuts against our accumulation-obsessed culture. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Picture your closet stuffed with clothes you never wear, your calendar crammed with obligations you resent, your phone bloated with apps you barely use. Each addition was meant to improve your life, yet collectively they've created a noise that drowns out what truly matters. This is the 16th Stoic command: subtract before adding. Most of us approach problems like overeager chefs tossing in more ingredients when the dish already lacks clarity. A project feels lacking, add more features. A relationship strains, schedule more date nights. But Stoicism suggests the opposite path: prune first. Before saying yes to another commitment, ask what no might make space for. Before buying another productivity tool, consider uninstalling 2 existing apps. The Roman Stoics lived this principle daily. Seneca voluntarily ate peasant food for weeks to remember how little he needed. Epictetus owned nothing but a cloak, a staff, and a wooden bowl. Their wealth wasn't in possessions, but in the vast mental real estate they protected from clutter. Modern research confirms their wisdom. Stanford psychologists found that reducing choices significantly boosts decision quality, a phenomenon called subtraction neglect. Think about your most focused work session. Was it when you had 30 browser tabs open, or when you closed everything but the essential document? The entrepreneur overwhelmed by strategies often needs fewer options, not more. The writer stuck in revisions might benefit from deleting weak paragraphs rather than adding explanations. Even Marie Kondo's decluttering movement echoes this ancient insight. We find what sparks joy by removing what doesn't. Here's your litmus test. When facing any dilemma, pause and ask, what could I eliminate here? A client drowning in emails experimented with this by unsubscribing from every newsletter for a month. The result, his reply time improved by 60% because his inbox only held genuine correspondence. A mother feeling stretched thin canceled 2 of her kids' 4 extracurricular activities. Not only did her stress drop, but her children's enthusiasm for their remaining pursuits soared. Subtraction isn't deprivation. It's the scalpel that cuts away the necrotic tissue, keeping your best life from healing properly. Tonight, try this exercise. Walk through your living space with a notebook. Jot down 20 possessions you haven't used in 6 months, not sentimental items, just dormant clutter. Tomorrow, remove 10. Notice the mental lightness that follows. Then apply this principle to your schedule. What meeting or habit could disappear without consequence? Like a sculptor freeing a statue from marble, your power lies in what you remove, not what you accumulate. The space you create isn't empty, it's where clarity takes root. Marcus Aurelius often gazed at the stars not for astronomy, but perspective, a practice modern astronauts describe as the overview effect. When viewing Earth from space, national borders vanish, petty conflicts seem absurd, and what once felt urgent appears laughably small. That's cosmic stoicism in action, zooming out until your problems shrink to their true proportions. Right now, someone is fuming over a passive-aggressive email, obsessing over a stranger's Instagram post, or losing sleep because a coworker took credit for their idea. But imagine floating above it all, watching these scenes play out like scenes from an ant colony. Suddenly, the sting dissolves. This is the 17th Stoic command: trade your microscopic focus for a telescopic lens. Consider how differently we assess pain across time scales. A child's scraped knee feels catastrophic in the moment, yet forgotten by dinner. A teenage breakup seems world-ending, then becomes a humorous story by 30. The Stoics applied this same long-view logic to adult struggles. That presentation you're agonizing over, in 5 years, you won't recall the slides, only whether you grew from the experience. The neighbor's snub that ruins your morning, it's already fading from their memory. Like adjusting a camera's focus, pulling back reveals what truly holds weight versus what's merely close to the lens. History's most resilient minds mastered this zoom function. Nelson Mandela studied Afrikaans during his imprisonment, not because he accepted apartheid, but because he saw beyond the cell to a future where understanding his oppressor's language would rebuild a nation. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz by visualizing himself decades later, lecturing on the psychological lessons learned in hell. Both understood what modern psychology confirms: the brain can't maintain panic when vividly picturing a distant future where current pain has transformed into wisdom. Try this tonight. When a worry arises, project it forward on 3 timelines. How will this feel in 3 days? Probably irritated. 3 months, maybe amused. 3 years, likely invisible. That argument with your partner over dishes. In a decade, you'll struggle to recall who even loaded the dishwasher last Tuesday. The work critique that stung, it'll either be a footnote in your growth story or erased by greater triumphs. This isn't about dismissing present emotions, it's about contextualizing them. Like a museum curator placing a single artifact within the grand exhibit of human history, you're assigning each stress its proper scale. Astronauts return from space with permanently shifted priorities. They call it post-orbital perspective. You needn't leave the atmosphere to gain this clarity. Sometimes all it takes is lying on a hillside at night, tracing constellations while your petty grievances evaporate in the face of infinity. The stars that watched over Marcus Aurelius still shine tonight, indifferent to our transient dramas. What a relief to realize our worries are just that transient. So next time overwhelm strikes, borrow the sky's vantage point. Your crisis isn't smaller than you think. It was never as large as you feared. Epictetus saw the invisible prison we build with our own thoughts. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. That inner critic whispering you're being watched, judged, found wanting, it's not reality, it's your interpretation of reality. Consider the simple act of eating alone at a restaurant. For some, it's pure enjoyment, savoring flavors without distraction. For others, it's torture, convinced the entire room sees them as a friendless outcast. The difference isn't in the situation, it's in the stories we attach to it. Social anxiety thrives on this mental fiction, that coworker who didn't return your smile. Your brain scripts an entire narrative about their disdain when perhaps they were squinting at a migraine. The stranger who glanced at your outfit, you assume critique when they might have admired your style or forgotten you existed 3 seconds later. Stoics called this prohairesis, the space between stimulus and response where we choose our interpretations. Most of us skip that pause, swallowing judgments whole like unchewed food that later chokes us. Take public speaking, a near-universal fear. The audience isn't holding scorecards rating your sweat stains or vocal cracks. They're too busy checking their phones, wondering what's for lunch, or battling their own insecurities. Your terror comes not from their actual opinions, but from the phantom jury you've summoned in your mind. Comedians know this secret well. The quickest way to disarm fear is to name it. I see you judging me right now. A speaker might joke her, and suddenly the imagined critics lose power because they've been dragged into daylight. Here's the liberating question: whose disapproval are you really avoiding? Often, it's not living people, but internalized voices from childhood, past rejections, or societal myths. A client paralyzed by what people will think of her career, Switch realized she was still hearing her father's decades-old warnings about stability. Once she named that ghost, its power faded. The Stoic remedy isn't to ignore all feedback, it's to distinguish between constructive criticism and self-manufactured fiction. Try this experiment today. Do something mildly unconventional. Wear mismatched socks, sing quietly in an elevator, order dessert first at dinner, and observe your mental commentary. That cringe you feel, that's the inner judge's grip weakening. Every time you act despite its protests, you prove opinions are like street signs. They only direct you if you choose to follow them. The courtroom you fear only exists between your ears, and you hold the gavel. Case dismissed. Seneca saw prosperity as the ultimate test of character, not because comfort corrupts, but because it reveals. His warning still echoes today. Prosperity tries the soul more than adversity ever could. Think about that last lazy Sunday when the couch swallowed you whole, or the week everything went smoothly and you somehow felt emptier than during crunch time. Comfort doesn't just soften muscles, it dulls minds. The 19th Stoic command flips this trap into strategy. Don't wait for life to ambush you. Ambush yourself first. Consider how elite athletes train. Marathoners don't just jog pleasant trails, they sprint hills in rainstorms. Firefighters don't only practice in calm conditions, they rehearse in smoke-filled rooms. Why? Because competence thrives on controlled chaos. The Stoics applied this same principle to mental fitness. A Roman senator might voluntarily sleep on the floor to remember luxury wasn't entitlement. A merchant would practice losing transactions to inoculate against panic when real losses hit. Their modern equivalent, scheduling discomfort before it schedules you. Take difficult conversations, those exchanges we avoid like expired milk. Most people wait until tensions boil over, then blurt grievances in anger, the Stoic approach. Initiate one tough talk this week while emotions are calm. Maybe it's asking a roommate to clean more, or telling a friend their jokes sometimes sting. The goal isn't conflict, it's calibration. Like lifting slightly heavier weights each gym session, these intentional frictions strengthen your emotional resilience. One executive client started scheduling monthly, awkward coffees, meetings with colleagues he'd normally avoid. Within months, his workplace anxiety halved because he'd rewired his brain to associate discomfort with growth rather than threat. Here's the twist: modern life has outsourced our adversity. Food arrives with a tap, thermostats erase seasons, and algorithms shield us from opposing views. We've become like zoo animals, well-fed but mentally atrophied. The remedy: micro-challenges that reactivate your primal adaptability. Try commuting without headphones, forcing yourself to sit with undistracted thoughts. Or order unfamiliar food without checking reviews. First, rediscover the thrill of minor uncertainty. Even something as simple as leaving your phone behind during walks trains your brain to tolerate disconnection. Tonight, open your calendar and block 30 minutes for a planned discomfort. Maybe it's finally calling that relative with differing political views, not to debate but to ask, what life experiences shaped your perspective? Perhaps it's submitting creative work to a small audience before you feel ready. The magic lies in the paradox. By regularly choosing what most avoid, you strip adversity of its power to intimidate. Seneca wasn't warning against prosperity itself, but the complacency it breeds. Your soul doesn't need more cushions, it needs more obstacles to climb. So set the alarm an hour early tomorrow, not because you have to, but because you can. The frostbite of dawn air on your face, that's the feeling of your comfort zone expanding. Seneca sliced through human suffering with surgical precision when he wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That single sentence exposes our greatest mental trap. We're time travelers who rarely visit the present. Right now, as you watch this, part of your mind is likely replaying yesterday's awkward conversation or pre-living tomorrow's meeting. Meanwhile, the steaming cup in your hands goes cold, the bird outside your window sings unheard, and the texture of this very moment slips through your fingers like sand. The 20th Stoic command isn't about mindfulness, it's about sovereignty, reclaiming the now from the tyranny of later. Take something as simple as eating an orange. Most of us peel it while scrolling through emails, barely registering the citrus spray or the way each segment bursts with tart sweetness. Contrast that with truly tasting it, noticing how the pith clings stubbornly to your thumbnail, how the scent lingers on your fingers like nature's perfume. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's neurological fact. When researchers at Harvard tracked people's happiness, they found minds wandering from the present activity predicted unhappiness more accurately than the activity itself. The meal could be filet mignon, but if you're mentally arguing with your boss while chewing, it might as well be cardboard. Future tripping, that compulsive leap into hypothetical scenarios, is imagination's cruelest trick. Picture lying in bed at night, mentally drafting emails you might never send, or rehearsing conversations that won't happen as scripted. Each mental rehearsal feels productive, but it's just borrowing pain from a future that may never arrive. The Stoics called this propassion suffering in advance for events that haven't occurred, like paying interest on a debt you might not owe. A client of mine agonized for weeks over potentially losing a contract, only to secure it effortlessly, but those lost weeks of peace. Those were real. Here's the pivot: presence isn't passive. It's the ultimate act of defiance against a world designed to distract. When you fully inhabit a conversation without mentally drafting your response, you're not just listening, you're rewiring centuries of conditioned half-attention. That morning shower you usually spend planning your day, try counting the water droplets on your shoulder instead. The act feels trivial, but the effect is tectonic. You're training your brain to anchor where your body resides. Pause right now and conduct an audit. Where is your mind physically present but mentally absent? Is it during your child's recital while you stress over work emails? During walks where podcasts drown out birdsong? Even now, as these words land, part of you might be drafting a grocery list. The invitation isn't to purge all planning. Stoics were master strategists, but to notice when you've vacated your own life. Like a homeowner who's always renovating but never lives in the house, we sacrifice the lived moment for mental blueprints of moments yet to come. Seneca's remedy was stark. Set aside a certain number of days where you will be content with the scantiest fare, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition I feared?" He wasn't prescribing poverty, but presence. The realization that most fears lose their fangs when brought into daylight. That project deadline haunting your weekend, write down the next physical action, open the document, sharpen the pencil, and suddenly the monster shrinks to manageable size. The future isn't your enemy, your alienation from the present is. So tonight, as you rinse a dish, feel the water's temperature. When a friend speaks, hear their pauses between words. The meaning of life isn't hidden in some distant peak, it's in the gravel beneath your shoes on the climb you're already taking. Marcus Aurelius didn't have a smartphone, but he diagnosed our modern crisis with eerie precision. Your ability to control your thoughts, treat it with respect. It's all that protects your mind from false perceptions. Imagine his horror seeing today's world, where the average person checks their phone 96 times daily, once every 10 minutes. Each buzz, ping, and notification isn't just interrupting your workflow, it's auctioning off fragments of your life's most finite resource, attention. That's the 21st Stoic command: guard your focus like a palace gatekeeper during a siege, because every distraction is a Trojan horse carrying stolen time. Consider the last hour you spent working while intermittently replying to texts, refreshing social feeds, and half listening to a podcast. Neurologists call this continuous partial attention, a state where you're doing everything and nothing simultaneously. Like trying to fill a leaky bucket, you pour in effort but retain little. Contrast this with deep work sessions, those rare stretches where hours dissolve because you're fully immersed in creation or problem solving. The difference isn't just productivity, it's the quality of your lived experience. A chef savoring the aroma of fresh basil versus someone inhaling a microwave meal between emails. Both are fed, but only one truly tastes. The Stoic antidote, a single task hour. Not a full digital detox that's often unsustainable, but 60 sacred minutes where your devices enter airplane mode and your mind aligns with one purposeful activity. It could be drafting a proposal without alt-tabbing to email, reading philosophy without annotating highlights for Instagram, or even a walk where you count sidewalk cracks instead of podcasts. The goal isn't monastic deprivation, it's recalibrating your attention's baseline. Like muscles atrophied by sedentary living, focus weakens without resistance training. One CEO client discovered his urgent emails averaged just 11 minutes between replies. His experiment, scheduling 2 single task blocks daily. Within weeks, his team adapted to fewer instant responses, and he reclaimed enough mental space to strategize rather than react. Here's the uncomfortable truth: your distractions aren't random, they're carefully engineered. Social media platforms hire neuroscientists to maximize addictive scrolling. News sites optimize headlines for outrage clicks. Even productivity apps gamify task management to keep you hooked on checking boxes rather than doing meaningful work. The Stoics faced no such predators, yet their remedy remains potent intentional ignorance. Seneca regularly took multi-day retreats to miss out on Rome's gossip. Today, that might mean deleting Twitter for election season or muting group chats during creative sprints. Voluntary absence isn't negligence, it's the ultimate act of self-possession. Tonight, conduct an attention audit. Open your phone's screen time report and note which apps hijack your focus most. Then ask, what did these hours actually purchase? Memorable experiences, deep relationships, or just the hollow satisfaction of staying current? The answer isn't to vilify technology, but to wield it like a Stoic, as a tool, not a tyrant. Your attention isn't just another resource, it's the lens through which your entire life is experienced. Adjust the focus and everything sharpens. So as you close this video, ask yourself not what you should stop doing, but what deserves your undivided presence today. That quiet moment of choosing, that's where your real power lies. Epictetus posed a question that cuts through lifetimes of self-deception. What would you have left to fear if you knew for certain you would die tomorrow? Not the abstract awareness that life ends someday, but the visceral certainty that your hours are numbered. That's the 22nd Stoic command: die before you die. Not physically, of course, but psychologically. Imagine waking from a near-fatal car crash with bandages still fresh, priorities rearranged like furniture after an earthquake. Suddenly, petty grievances lose their grip: the coworker who took credit for your idea, the scratch on your new phone, the social slight that ruined your week. These shrink to irrelevance against the stark clarity of mortality's spotlight. This is ego death in its purest form, not some mystical transcendence, but the realization that most of what we chase and fear are shadows dancing on a cave wall. History's most transformative moments often follow this pattern. Cancer survivors describe the strange gift of their diagnosis, how it burned away superficial concerns like alcohol sterilizing a wound. Entrepreneurs who have faced bankruptcy frequently credit it with freeing them to take bold risks they'd previously feared. Even in ancient times, Roman generals would keep skulls on their desks as Memento Mori reminders not to depress themselves, but to distill their decisions to what truly mattered. Modern psychology confirms this phenomenon, calling it post-traumatic growth, the way existential threats can paradoxically expand our capacity for joy and purpose once the ego's petty demands are silenced. Consider the last time you faced a genuine crisis, a health scare, a relationship collapse, a financial freefall. Recall how your usual worries evaporated. replaced by crystalline focus on survival and connection. That's your brain operating without the filters of social approval or future tripping. The Stoics sought to access that clarity without needing catastrophe as the key. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by his master's brutality, didn't just philosophize about detachment, he lived it daily. His teachings echo a profound truth. We suffer because we confuse our fleeting self-image, the ego's desperate need to be important, right, admired, with our essential self. Here's the experiment. Pick one day this week to live as if it's your last, not with bucket list extravagance, but with radical honesty. At each decision point, ask, does this choice reflect who I truly am or who I pretend to be to please others? That meeting you're dreading, would you attend if tomorrow didn't exist? That grudge you're nursing, would it still feel justified? The magic lies in what remains when the inessential burns away. A dying man doesn't regret missing a promotion, he regrets missing bedtime stories with his kids. He doesn't anguish over social media slights, he mourns the love letters left unwritten. This practice isn't about morbidity, it's about liberation. Like a sculptor chipping away excess marble to reveal the figure within, ego death removes everything that isn't authentically you. The businessman obsessed with luxury cars discovers he actually finds joy in teaching kids to read. The influencer addicted to likes realizes she's happiest painting alone in her garage. These aren't hypotheticals, they're documented shifts in those who have faced mortality and returned changed. The Stoic twist: you needn't wait for tragedy to strike. The mirror can serve as your memento mori every morning. Ask the face reflected, if today were my final day, would I spend it as planned? The answer either justifies your path or demands immediate correction. Tonight, try this closing ritual. Write 2 sentences. First, today I wasted time on. Second, today I truly lived when. No judgment, just observation. You'll notice something revelatory. The activities that fill the first blank rarely involve real connection, creation, or growth. The second, those moments often cost nothing yet mean everything. That's the gift of dying before you die. You stop postponing life while waiting to live. The clock's ticking was never the enemy, your denial of it was. So inhale deeply. That breath isn't just air, it's a whisper from the future, asking what you'll do with the breaths that remain. These 22 Stoic commands aren't just ancient wisdom. They're mental crowbars for prying open the cages we've built around ourselves. Look back at every barrier you've ever faced, that voice whispering, you're not ready, the fear of what others might think, the exhaustion from fighting battles that weren't yours to win. What if those limits weren't real constraints, but mental artifacts like imaginary fences surrounding a wide open field? Marcus Aurelius saw it clearly. The obstacle is the way. Not because suffering is virtuous, but because every wall you perceive becomes the training ground for your liberation. Consider how these commands interlock like armor. Mastering the dichotomy of control teaches you where to direct your energy. Voluntary discomfort builds resilience before crisis strikes. Memento Mori sharpens your priorities like a whetstone on a blade. And when you combine them, when you face adversity with Amor Fati while journaling your growth and guarding your attention, you're not just practicing philosophy. You're engineering an unshakable core, the entrepreneur who fails 3 startups but approaches the 4th with anti-fragility, the parent who models emotional regulation during chaos. They're not superhuman, they've simply internalized these tools until they become reflexes stronger than fear. Seneca, watching Rome's elite chase empty status, wrote words that still ignite purpose. You are your own hindrance. You are your own prison. Your potential stretches as far as your courage to dismantle the walls. That's the ultimate reveal. The chains you feel are often made of nothing sturdier than old stories and inherited assumptions. Test them, choose one command this week, just one, and wield it like a lockpick. Maybe it's catching yourself when you complain about something beyond your control. Perhaps it's scheduling 15 minutes of undistracted thought instead of reaching for your phone. Watch what happens when you act from principle rather than habit. Your turn now. Which of these commands whispered to you? Was it Epictetus dismantling your ego, or Musonius Rufus challenging you to subtract before adding? Drop it in the comments, not just to share, but to solidify your commitment. Because here's the secret Stoics knew: wisdom untested is just decoration. But when you take one of these tools into the messy, glorious battlefield of daily life, that's when philosophy stops being words on a screen and becomes freedom in your bones. The gate is open. Walk through.